Welcome to episode 104, where we're going to talk about some compression therapy or decompression therapy, a little bit of hot and cold therapy, pain management techniques, when to use them, how to use them, why they work, all that good stuff. So just literally it came from an example from last night of myself. And, as some of you know, I've been dealing on and off with lower back pain for about 13 years. And sometimes it doesn't bother me at all. And I can lift and I can golf and I can live life and not have any pain. And there's some times where, like this last week, where I couldn't even bend over to putt a golf ball, and picking things up off the floor was hard, putting my socks and shoes on in the morning. And, when I have these flare-ups, to be honest with you, I will say that, just like the rest of us, we all need accountability. I tend not to do as much of the proactive work that I should be doing for my prehab self. And I tend to be kind of a little bit more reactive sometimes, which is a bad thing. So don't do what I'm doing is what I'm saying. So whatever, yesterday I got home, or woke up in the morning, and I was just probably like a 7 out of 10 on pain. Everything fucking hurt. I just felt like that sharp pain. And I tend to deal with that nerve compression, so it could be a bulging disc, could be a herniation maybe. I have no idea. I don't have an x-ray or a doctor to tell me exactly that. I tend to deal with my own problems, which is why I have problems still. And so I went throughout the day, and yesterday I rarely take, any type of painkillers or aspirin, or even when I'm sick, I barely take anything. I'm just someone that tries to avoid that kind of stuff for the most part. But yesterday I was kind of like, you know what, I'm taking some Advil, because right now my back is killing me, and I don't want to be the person that's going to not coach or demo classes or demo for my clients. I try not to show it in front of people as much as I can. And got home, and it probably turned into an 8, because the one thing that I've realized with my back, and just pain in general for anybody listening to this, is if the more you're on your feet or the more you use it, you tend to just make it worse. So you're kind of trying to do your things, okay, this feels good, so I'm playing around with things all day long, let me try this, let me play around with this. But me being on my feet all day, it's when I work an 8 or 10 hour day and I'm on my feet lifting weights, rotating, twisting, lifting, doing that over and over and over again, it tends to fatigue my back. So by the time I do end up sitting down, because I rarely sit during the day, I feel like my back just literally gets stuck in that position. And it's almost like I kind of just get glued into flexion of my lumbar spine. So whatever, we went outside, and I was telling my fiance, I was telling Nikki, I was like, you know what, my back is just fucking killing me right now. I was like, I think I got to take a little bit more Advil. And then I was like, you know what, let me put some rock tape on. I haven't put rock tape on in a while. And I'm not joking, from the application of the rock tape, I went from a 7 or an 8 on the pain scale to probably maybe all the way down to a 2, but probably let's call it probably closer to a 3. So I literally cut it by 75%. Just my pain just immediately went away, and I was like, holy shit, and to have something that and I can generally have a pretty high pain tolerance, to have something to go to that high of a number, generally when I have flare-ups, it's kind of or even the last 6 months, my back's definitely been in a worse place, so I kind of just hang around a 5 or 6 when it is kind of bothering me. So it's not it's debilitating. I'm still able to work, I'm still able to work out, I'm still able to live life, I'm still able to do it. It's just kind of always there, and it's always nagging, which is definitely annoying. And the one thing that I've realized is when I do go into those really bad flare-ups, it just mentally, it takes me away from everything, right? So, and that's kind of why I wanted to talk about it today. I mean, anybody that's dealing with an injury or pain, you understand how debilitating and distracting it is from the rest of your life. Because when you're in pain, you don't really prioritize anything else besides wanting to be out of pain. Even last night, a weird example, it's just I was I didn't even want to cook dinner. I was tell her, let's order out. I don't want to do any of this stuff. It's just was so checked out of it. So we're going to talk a little bit about KT tape. We're going to talk about decompression. We're going to talk about compression. And then I want to kind of briefly talk about some heat and cold, but I'm not going to spend too much time on that. Definitely want to spend more time on the compression side. So I took the rock tape certification beginning of the pandemic, so 4 years ago now, and I wanted just to learn a little bit more of how it worked, the application behind it. I had a feeling it was probably going to be somewhere in the field of how soft tissue and foam rolling works, but then also kind of the other side of just compression, right? So sometimes wearing, compression knee sleeves for squats, or basketball players wearing it on their arms, or runners wearing compression leggings or socks or things like that when they run. So to kind of begin with the soft tissue side is you got to remember, when you're in pain, in order to rehab yourself out of it, a lot of times that could be a restriction on range, or, it's obviously just kind of getting yourself stronger in certain positions, right? Getting yourself the ability to be able to contract pain free or be able to breathe into positions. So when you look at most physical therapy and kind of the route that we take everybody through, it's about getting them to be able to move, right? Safely again and move correctly again. But most importantly, the first thing and the first order that we have to spend time on is getting you out of pain. Because I'll give you an example. When I'm in pain, my hips become a little bit tighter. I kind of get locked into like a little bit more internally rotated of a position. I get kind of pulled into an anterior tilt. Like when my back flares up, I literally look like I almost have like a pooch belly. It's because I'm just getting yanked down. So all these other things around the area of pain are going to turn on to kind of, try to create some more stability for you. And that makes it really, really hard to go through this kind of rehab exercise or movement or work that you kind of set out for yourself. And the reason why is because your body's locked up in a position to try to prevent causing more pain. So it's trying to create more stability by doing that. So when you look at the tools or the strategies that you need to use, like when you're in a state of pain, for anybody listening to this, step one is, how do I create an environment where my body feels safe to move in and it feels like it can reduce pain or even remove pain, right? And this is where compression, or this is where, wearing a heat pad on your back sometimes. This is where, some people, you see them icing an injury, or like what, all these different little strategies. I've always used foam rolling as kind of my big thing in the beginning. And the cool thing about foam rolling, for those that don't know, is like foam rolling doesn't make a muscle longer, right? A lot of times people think that they foam roll in order to increase range of motion, right? So when you think about all these muscle fibers, you think about these layers of fascia, which is basically just connective tissue that holds the whole body together. In order for fascia to be able to work well, it needs to be able to slide and glide against itself, right? So it needs to have enough hydration in the tissue to be able to move. So fascia is super sensitive to dehydration, so lack of hydration, and it's super sensitive to lack of movement, right? But sometimes when things spasm or tight, and the one thing, like Thomas Myers talks about this a lot in anatomy trains, and this is big on kind of these like, fascial lines and these kind of meridians, that everything is connected, right? Like if I want to increase my forward fold to touch my toes, me rolling out the bottom of my foot with a golf ball would actually improve that. Why? Because the bottom of my foot, that fascia is connected down to my Achilles, to my gastroc, to my hamstrings, to my glutes, to my erectors. So everything is interconnected, right? And when you think about like something we talk about in functional training all the time, like contralateral movements, you'll hear coaches talk about that. Like if I run, every time I take a step, when my right glute fires, my left lat fires. So these interconnections, right? There's these cross transverse slings, there's these lateral lines, these, anterior posterior lines. So all this is what kind of creates communication in the body. And one thing about, muscle involvement is nothing is isolated, right? And this is where this kind of whole isolation type of exercise is something that's, I don't want to say debunked, but generally, we encourage people to focus more on compound movements because everything is integrated. But when you're in pain, what you're happening is just like that highway has a little bit of traffic, and that could be adhesions, that could be tension, whatever's going on, dehydration and stiffness. I'll say this, I'm someone that drinks every night. I love me a good glass of red wine with dinner, or 2 glasses every night. The more I drink, and a weekend's a perfect example, the stiffer I feel. And the reason why people feel stiff with a good hangover if they drink too much is because the fascia has become dehydrated, right? So coming back to the foam rolling example, if I'm in pain, or if I have tension or tightness that's causing pain, maybe even in a movement, so maybe in more dynamic fashion, not just statically having pain all the time, what you're doing with foam rolling is you're starting to create this pressure that's facilitating a neuromuscular response. So the nervous system is what controls the muscular system. The muscles are what move the body around and the bones around, right? So in order to have good movements, we need good muscle contraction. In order to have good muscle contraction, we need to have good neuromuscular kind of communication, right? So I used to think when I first started foam rolling that I lay on this thing just like me rolling out pizza dough or hitting a steak with a hammer or something like that is literally going to lengthen the tissue, right? But what's really happening is it's a neuromuscular thing. So when you start to roll out your quad with a foam roller, your body's going, wow, there's a lot of pain. It's a little sensitive. Maybe that's a 7 out of 10 for somebody. And what the nervous system is telling the body to do is let those muscles relax a little bit, right? So that's the facilitation that you're getting. And that relaxation, so basically letting go of the tension in the tissue from the fascial and the muscle system, allows you to look like you have more length. So this is why when you roll out something or foam roll or do trigger point or massage, it looks like you have more range of motion because you now created the ability of the body to feel like it can move safely, right? Because the muscle is now back in its normal position. So that's one thing about foam rolling that most people need to remember, that it's not the thing that solves the problem. It's the thing that creates the environment to then move to then solve the problem, right? So when you look at most people's mobility issues, with or without pain, we need to go through some type of soft tissue work and treatment. We need to go through some type of lengthening work. So corrective stretching, static, dynamic, it doesn't matter, just movement. And then ideally, most importantly, we want to be strengthening those muscles, right? Both the muscle that we're working on and the antagonist muscle about it. And the more that we can get the lengthening and strengthening stage to work together, the better and more efficient this process is. So I'm a big fan of massage therapy. I'm a big fan of foam rolling and trigger point. I'm a big fan of compression and taping and all these things, because all of those are going to create a really, really cool environment for you guys, or safe, not cool. Cool too, I guess. Safe environment for your body to actually move more freely. So this example of KT tape, right? So the thing that was one of my first questions I asked when we had like open questions, like, well, how does rock tape work? Like, why, when I put tape on my back when I'm feeling sensitive, does it make it feel better? And when you think about, and I forget the term, I'm probably not talking at a very, very high level here. I want to say nociceptors. Basically, it's like these like kind of like little neurons in the body. That's how we feel pain, right? So if I'm going to use my example, let's just make something up. Let's say it was a bulging disc or a herniated disc. All those nerves that are coming out of each little vertebrae and those nerve bodies, if I'm having any compression against the nerve, that's going to create that tension of pain. So if I can pull some of the compression or tension away from that spot, I can alleviate some of the pain. So that's one of the big things that's happening is when I tape the body, you're not really putting a lot of stretch in the tape. You're putting your body with a little bit of stretch in the skin. So number one, there's some type of mechanical support and stability. That's that's kind of the easiest way to think about it. If I tape a muscle or a joint or an area, now think about this with like athletic tape in sports, right? Like I used to have a lot of ankle injuries when I was playing football and lacrosse. So there'd be a lot of times before games where I'd tape my ankles and tape my cleats up, and it would create more stability, right? With KT tape, you're not getting so much of the mechanical support. You are to a certain degree, but it's nowhere near what you would do with like athletic tape, because KT tape has stretch, right? It should stretch just like the skin should be able to stretch. It's going to help with some of the blood flow and lymphatic movement as well, because when you think about getting, and this is kind of when you look at like hot and cold therapy, right? Like hot or heat is going to be something that's actually going to promote blood flow, right? So it's going to allow us to get, nutrients in and out, right? Lymphatic is basically a whole separate system from the cardiovascular system, but it doesn't have a pump. Like the cardiovascular system has a heart that pumps the blood, right? So you can circulate your blood throughout the entire body. Now, when you look at things like cold, it obviously kind of hinders the circulation. This is why it generally is going to reduce swelling and pain for people. And there's some debate around this in the space of like, athletic trainers or pain management that like, if I hurt my knee, icing it's going to make it feel better. The lack of circulation that comes from it, the icing itself, the cold itself is going to help reduce the swelling and reduce the pain. Now, that being said, this is why we don't want to cold plunge after weight training. This is generally why we suggest people not doing ice because that inflammatory process that happens, the inflammation from the swelling, is what allows you to get the nutrients back in there so you can actually recover faster. But it does not help with the pain, right? So that's one thing that a lot of people think like, okay, if I have a bruised knee, me putting ice on there is going to help heal faster. It's going to help reduce the pain, but it's not necessarily going to help you recover faster. So when you think about blood flow, when you think about lymphatic movement, lymphatic system, like I was saying earlier, doesn't have a heart, doesn't have a pump. So the pump is the movement. So we want to do things that are going to be able to do that. And sometimes that, like when you think about foam rolling, when you think about flossing, when you think about massage therapy, when you think about exercise, when you think about movement in general, like you doing a squat is movement, right? Any type of muscle contraction is going to allow for this lymphatic movement and drainage from that area. And that's going to be the thing that's going to allow to get nutrients in and some of that waste product out, especially during injuries, right? And as you become more stiff and static in certain places, you don't have good blood flow through those areas and you don't have good lymphatic movement. And this is why touch is such a powerful thing for the human body. This is why I'm so excited for the expansion of Palo Alto to have a massage therapist or manual therapist of some sort on staff, because it's just kind of part of my methodology of like do some type of soft tissue stuff to create that environment, then go into your training because you're going to have better success with the training. So back to the KT stuff. Number one is getting some type of mechanical support. Number two is basically the decompressive effect that it has. So when you think about like fascia, you think about the epidermis and the dermis and the fascial layers and the muscle tissue and however deep you want to go with this. When you have tape, right, you're creating kind of this almost like this pulling on the skin, right? Because when you apply it in a little bit of a stretched area. So this way, when it comes back to its normal length or even a shortened position, it kind of has this pulling effect on the skin. And just a little bit makes a world of a difference. And I'm proof of this because literally within 10 minutes, I was like, holy shit, I feel better. So that decompressive effect on the nerve is what's basically desensitizing that area. So coming back to this pain management aspect of how do I recover from it, besides doing the actual work, is number one, create an environment that's pain-free. So for you guys, if it's a manual therapist, if it's massage, if it's rolling on a lacrosse ball, if it's compressive sleeves while you're running or working out, if it's or taping yourself or foam rolling, like whatever those are great ways as step one to now allow you to go into the modalities of stretching or corrective exercise or whatever movement you need to do to be able to do that pain free. Because when you're doing it in pain, you're never going to get the correct movement mechanics out of it. You're going to have all this compensation happen because you're having all these surrounding kind of like neighboring antagonist muscles with it stabilize in order to prevent or encourage less pain, right? So the same thing on the compression side though too is basically like compressive stuff is going to be the exact opposite. It's going to be like creating compression. It's going to create a little bit of stability. It's going to create a little bit of traction. It's going to create a little bit of heat, and those in return are obviously going to make you feel better and create a little bit more stability too. But it's helping with the blood flow as well, right? And that's what we see with heat pad. I used to do heat pads on my lower back all the time. I used to do icing after like hardcore workouts or injuries sometimes, like, or not workouts, but like games. Sometimes my knees would be hurting or sometimes my shoulders would be hurting. So these are all pain management techniques, right? So when it comes to compression or decompressive technique, do not underestimate the power of these things creating the environment that you need. Now, the one thing that I do want to preface, because I'm not going to go too long on this one today, is these are not strategies and tools to get you out of pain from a causation perspective. These are tools and strategies that are going to get you out of pain on a symptomatic level. Like my back is hurting me, but it's a symptom of another problem, right? So by me putting some KT tape on my back, I have treated the symptom to allow me to move forward without pain on actually correcting the root cause of what's the problem, right? So is it my hips that are the problem? Is it the pelvis or rib cage orientation? Is it my breathing? Is it my whatever the issue is? Step one is getting myself out of pain, right? So I kind of wanted to share that with you guys today. I wanted to keep this one a little bit short, but using things like KT tape, using things like compressive knee sleeves or wrist wraps or straps, like you have this mechanical support and stability that's going to help you move better or move more or move pain-free. But then you get this kind of circulatory thing where you're getting more blood flow, you're getting more nutrients out, you're getting some of the waste products out, you're getting some maybe decompression on some of the nerves depending on where the pain's at for certain people. And you can use this with heat, you can use this with cold even sometimes, you can use this with compression, you can use this with tape, you can use this with tools, you can do this with some foam rollers, you can do this with massage therapy, like all these different strategies. Use them when you are in a state of pain for those that are listening to this when they are. And then understand that I don't want to rely on me having to wear tape the rest of my life for my back not to hurt. I need to understand that this is the bridge that's going to allow me to get into movement safely without pain so I can then address the problem and fix it from there, right? All right, guys. Well, I want to keep this one short, like I said. So have a great day. I will see you guys next week. And if you have any questions, suggestions, anything like that, shoot me a DM, shoot me an email. Hit us up. Thank you.